Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to have a very interesting but a bit of a lengthy discussion. We're going to talk of Trump at 145 and Z at 125, like I said yesterday. And the world is at war. Make no mistake on that. And let me also take this opportunity for those of you who are joining me from P Gurus also. Right, here we go. It's now been over a week, 10 days since this whole story has started. The tariffs on US exports to China, that is what China has imposed, is 125%. US has imposed a 145% tariff. The other countries are at 90% and or they're at 10% and under negotiation in the next 90 days. Well, this is what it is. Virtually, we are on the verge of a war of a different kind. The earlier war was a clearly the last war was a Cold War, and this is an economic war, come a Cold War, because as I, as days pass, you will see geopolitical issues getting rolled into it. And what's interesting is that even if the economic part goes off, I think the geopolitics will kick in, and economics will continue to remain, and you're going to see a turbulent period till something comes out, a new system comes out. Okay, it is in that context that we're going to examine this whole story today, and we'll see it in two parts. We'll first see the American strategy. Why are they doing it, and what are their compulsions, and what are their way forward? And we'll then look at the Chinese hand, how strong or weak it is, and what it can do. Then we'll come to some conclusions. Now, this is not the end of the story. I'm going to talk of this tomorrow with General Narayanan, and maybe in the week ahead with a few more people. But that's for a later day. Let's get back to what I have to tell you. Right, the world is at war. So the first thing is what Trump's strategy against China. What are his motivations? What are his X, Y, Z? We'll have to understand that. Fundamental changes, globalization, done, dusted, protectionism, back. We are now looking at block systems which are getting back. And as we go along in this presentation, as we go along in this presentation, that part will become clear that the block system is coming back. Next, as I've been telling for the past 3 days, there is a factor that nations are remilitarizing. So you're going to see an era of the next 1 decade where there is going to be a arms race. A lot of money being spent on arms ammunition. Each nation will have to be in it for itself. The old treaty alliances might be shaky. Chinese militarization will continue. They have no choice. If everyone around them is militarizing, so will they, come what may. Nuclear threshold is about to be breached. A lot will depend on what happens with Iran. If that goes somewhere, well, we are looking at something else altogether. So these are the issues at stake. But let me today talk of something slightly different. We'll talk of this. We'll talk of what's Trump's grand vision. Is he trying something great? People say that he is more transactional, he doesn't have a strategy, all that. No, but I don't think so. I don't think so. There is a vision. He's got a vision. And this vision has been enunciated by him during his campaign speeches. I was listening to some of them today, and I was listening to a few odd dialogue, studying, things. And certain things come in. There's this realistic school of thought, and it says if there is power, it will manifest itself, and it has to be used. A powerful country will exercise its power. That's realism, and it will exercise its power the way it wants. It deems necessary as per its interests. Interests are supreme, and nothing else matters. Does Trump have this realism streak? He has, like what John Mearsheimer says. Re- he lives in a realistic world. So if he can live in a realistic world, why can't Trump live in a realistic world? And he said that make America great again, America first. These two things, he's realistic about what he wants. And if you have power, you have to use it for influence. Then people are talking of reverse Kissinger. That is Trump doing something to split the bond between China and Russia. Just what is reverse Kissinger? Kissinger engineered a split between USSR and China. Is Trump doing the reverse of that? It's not so easy. The circumstances are widely different. It might never happen. But inherent in this whole story is this. I'll talk about it when we come there. And then there's this theory which has started. Everyone will have his spheres of interest. People are talking, look, Trump is a kind who will say, I will have a Monroe Doctrine, and around USA, I'll have my sphere of interest. And he'll allow China to have its sphere of interest, and people will have their sphere of interest. He'll not interfere anywhere. Well, that is one way of thinking. People are talking of G2 and all that. It might still happen, and it's something, anything might happen. And then I think a combination of all this, he said, I actually listened to his talk today. It says manifest destiny. It's America's manifest destiny to be the greatest nation on earth. It's America's manifest destiny to expand in all dimensions. He's come with all these four thought processes. There is just no way of saying that no, he's transactional. Oh, आज कल उठेगा तो depending on which side of the bed he this thing, so he gets up. That will be his thought process. Sorry, it is possible that he's not wanted to get into this situation, but he's got into it. In fact, just now I saw something which says for certain amount of some tariff relaxation for Samsung and Apple, because Apple and Samsung are trying to invest here and all that. Let's see what happens. I mean, I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Now, after this, what next? I'll go back to this. People have to understand what Trump has been up to ever since he's taken over. Very clearly, his first foray, and it still remains so, was towards Greenland, Mexico, Panama, and Canada. The typical Western Hemisphere, the core of the Western Hemisphere, right? So that indicates what we spoke of sphere of influence. Then he attempted, uh, Gaza and the Middle East and West Asia. He got some order into it, right? But that didn't give any indication of anything much. But what gave the indication that he was Russia, Ukraine, split that, achieve peace with Russia? It new terms altogether. even at the cost of jettisoning Europe, right? Make friends with Russia to wean them away from China. Well, reverse Kissinger. But at the same time, he's also gone in for you know enhanced friendship with India, which is now very clear. He's also focused on Taiwan. He's also focusing on Japan. And interestingly, he's focusing on two more. He's focusing on North Korea and Iran. Iran, the talks are going on today, and North Korea, he's made an outreach. In the past 6, 7 months, there have been a lot of talks of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea forming an axis. Is he breaking it? That manifest destiny, call it manifest destiny, realism, spheres of influence, what is it? It doesn't fit in any stereotype. It's happening. But then his tariffs are across the board, irrespective of allies and friends or foes. The contradiction. So, what are you looking at? You're looking at a huge amount of uncertainty going ahead. The old order is gone. The new order, we don't know. Whether it's economic or geopolitical, we don't know. And it's evolving. And lot what happens in the economic field will get reflected in the geopolitical field. And there'll be very, very, very deep undercurrents which will come up. The economic things might superficially get resolved, but not the geopolitical. Okay. But what is one thing which is very clear is he wants American dominance. And he's simultaneously looking at internal reform. He says regain the internal systems. Okay. Now, there's a lot of commentary on everyone's viewpoint, and especially CNN and New York Times and Washington Post and all these left liberals. They say this chap has gone bonkers. A lot of Nobel Prize. I heard Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize literature, a Nobel Prize in economics. He talked today, and this is something completely uncertain now. One doesn't know where it's going. Same with Joe Stiglitz and all that. I agree with it. They all say, many people say Trump has done something very foolish. But there is a lobby which is now saying that this instability might be worth it. It's good to give a try. This is something which I've started saying in the past 3, 4 days. And this is an article from New York Times which is completely against Trump. So that's an interesting development. So while you'll find a certain amount of narrative coming out from within America which is completely against Trump, there's another narrative which is coming also. A viewpoint, call it a narrative, viewpoint, whatever it is, for Trump. They know it's going to be unstable, a zone of instability, but they say it's good. Okay, the trade balance, which I've been showing for the past 3 days, right? Now, the table here is very clear. Okay, we are looking at USA aiming at China and those in a differentiated manner. So everyone is being treated differently. So with the rest of the world, Trump has kept a window open. With China, he's put a wall. How? And the first brick of that wall, already, let me tell you, has been taken out by Samsung and Apple, which I just saw. I couldn't see the full thing. I just saw one line on it. But let's see how it goes further. But what's up is that both the countries have come to a realization that At least USA has come to the realization we're going to change things. There's no way but to change things. Okay. Now, the Trump thought, this is his thought, which has come out. He says no one can ignore USA. No one can cheat on USA anymore. That era is over. If I am convinced that I am being cheated by someone, I will go to any length to ensure I don't get cheated. He's the president. Good, bad, or ugly, for the next 4 years, he's going to do what he wants to do. There's this issue of the mandate of the street versus the mandate of the house. And I'll show it to you a little later. Trump has the mandate on the street. The bottom 50% of Americans, if you take their standard of living, everything over the past 20 years, has gone down. The top 50% might have gone up. There's a divergence. And it is on the bottom 50% that Trump has ridden to where he is. And they're going to cheer him because they have nothing to lose. It's the top 50% who have something to lose. And this is an important factor because this will dictate the amount of pain which America can absorb. And here, Trump seems to have a ear to the ground. And he's got a larger plan in action. I've told you, manifest destiny and all that. Right? And then, in his thinking, the EU has been neutralized. The EU is in a state where it can't go to China, it can't go to Russia, it can't wherever. And many countries are today, as per their thinking, the American thinking, on the side of USA. And they're going to enforce it. It's their plan. Okay. You can't stop that plan, whether you like it or not. Right. Now, here I think, I'll come to it a little later. I think Trump has played a smart card. He started with tariffing everyone, and suddenly he removed the tariffs on the rest of the world except China. So, where everyone was against him, all of a sudden, the rest of them have started talking to him. It's a fact. And the countries which matter have started talking to him. I mean, all his allies have started talking to him, and he said, I'll give you preferential thing. Even EU has started talking to him. Another smart thing he's done, he's not put any tariffs on Russia. So, in effect, while he's pushed China away, he's pushing Russia towards. So, the reverse Kissinger effect is, whether it's by design or default, is happening. And in this turmoil, whether Russia will go along with China to the end is a question mark. If you've seen, there's a studied silence from Russia. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Listen to what Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary of USA. He's the finance minister. What does he have to say? And here he brings out between Wall Street and Main Street. Very, very interesting, And this chap was a Wall Street banker.
For the last 4 decades, basically since I began my career in Wall Street has grown wealthier than ever before, and it can continue to grow and do well. But for the next 4 years, the Trump agenda is focused on Main Street. It's Main Street's turn. It's Main Street's turn to hire workers. It's Main Street's turn to drive investment. And it's Main Street's turn to restore the American dream.
So he's talking of restoring the American dream for the next 4 years. So GDP is no more a great deal. Profits are no more a great deal. He's looking at Main Street, the bottom 50%. And this is something you find recurring in the American theme. Okay. And then, these are core interests of America. And look at this. Look at fentanyl. Fentanyl, for many of us might not be an issue, but not for America. And what does this man say? Navarro.
From our perspective, China's killed over 1 million Americans with deadly fentanyl and related drugs, and it simply refuses to do anything about that. Many of these people are prime age workers, so they not only kill Americans, they're killing our workforce. At the same time, as you know, Maria, and we talk a lot about this, since 2001, China has destroyed over 60,000 American factories and stolen over 5 million manufacturing jobs. That's the state of play. So all we're asking for is fairness.
So the two strains which have come out, one is fentanyl and the second is factories destroyed, a hollowed out American industrialization. This is typically Chinese way of waging a war. Never direct, always indirect. Deception, undercutting, info war, three war strategy. So this war is not today. It's just come to a head. And I've heard a lot of people say, look, it's taken a guy like Trump to do this. And there are a whole lot of speeches on the internet about Obama, Clinton, everyone talking about this business of offshoring and tariffs and all that. No one had the guts to do it. This man has had the guts. So to that extent, he's got support. And then, very interesting, this is something I thought was a masterstroke. What is this? This is Trump holding a cabinet meeting, or rather, he got his entire cabinet around him 3 days back, and he made them give their views, and those were aired to the nation. So by this very simple process, he's very democratically communicated to those people who he wants to stand by him in this hour of crisis. This is the interesting part which is done. Okay, he's digging his heels in. He's dug his heels in. He's not only dug his, he's on the offensive still. So what are those offensives which is lines of action which are going? Okay, now this is again Scott Bessent. Okay, right, because I have the important people. He got everyone to speak. I'll get the important issues only. What have been spoken.
I'd echo what Howard said on the trade queue, that we've got over 75 countries that want to come in. So it'll be Treasury, Commerce, Jameson at USTR, and we're putting a process in place. And as you said, you're going to be part of the negotiations too. I've had these countries call me up, and Secretary Bessent, we're happy you're going to be negotiating. Well, President Trump's going to be involved too. So, bring your best deal on the budget. It's moving quickly in the House and the Senate, thanks to your leadership. We're also going to have debt ceiling in there, so we're going to get an increase in the debt ceiling. So, and that will be the done and dusted for
part of the bill that we just got to vote on today.
Part of the bill. It'll be done and dusted for 2 years. We won't have to worry about that. And then I gave a speech yesterday to 1,400 small and community bankers, and they were so happy to hear from your administration. And I told them Wall Street's done great for the past 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. It can continue doing great, but it's Main Street's turn now. And it's those small bankers through deregulation, through emphasis on Main Street, your Main Street agenda, bringing back jobs, that is going to power the smaller communities. And then finally, the bond auction went very well yesterday. We had a lot of foreigners show up as the support, showing that the U.S. is still the best place to invest. The inflation report, as you said, was quite good. And energy prices are down more than 20% since January 20th.
Amazing.
A lot of issues in this.
Great comfort.
Thank you.
Lot of issues in this. Okay, 75 countries already started negotiating, right? And this, he's been saying this, right? And he's talking of small banks. He's spoken to them. He's, a lot of grassroots issues to strengthen the position at home. They know they're in for a tough fight with China. It's not going to be easy. So they're preparing. Okay. Now here, look at this. What is the next one?
We
This
just
is
got
Hexen.
back to Panama last night. We were at the Panama Canal with their Southcom commander ships, F-18s, troops, and signed a couple of historic deals. One which is Panama Canal Authority, a framework for U.S. vessels, first and free through the Panama Canal. And then also a memorandum of understanding with their security minister for the presence of U.S. troops. Fort Sherman is an old U.S. base there, as well as their naval station and air station, jointly with Panama to secure the Panama Canal from Chinese influence. That's something you said, we're taking back the canal. China's had too much influence. Obama and others let them creep in. We, along with Panama, are pushing them out, sir. So we had a very successful trip there. President Molino sends his regards, very complimentary of the U.S. He's a great ally, and I think they want the Communist Chinese out. And with our troops there partnering with their forces, we've got a chance to push them all the way out, sir.
So, Panama Canal, the Chinese are being ejected out. This is just not a trade war. Let's be very clear about what we are talking of. That's why I said a world at war. Till 20 days back, 1 month back, we didn't realize that what's going to happen. I've been telling Panama. Panama is only the first step. As I see US influence in this Latin America, whether it's Argentina, whether it's Ecuador, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Argentina, they're going to all start the story differently. You're going to start seeing this happen. So, Chinese interests are getting squeezed. Okay, is that all?
Mr. President.
Let's look at this.
Well, Mr. President, one of the most important things I believe you'll achieve in your presidency is reordering the world in a proper way. For 31 years, more than 31 years now, multiple administrations have allowed the Chinese to deindustrialize this country, to take away jobs and factories and pillars of our national strength. And what you're doing now, I think, is a great service to our country, but ultimately to the world. And I want to congratulate you and your team that's working on that, because it has extraordinary geopolitical implications, as you see, from all these other countries that are now coming here and wanting to join something that actually makes it's crazy to allow these. I mean, basically, we lived in a world where Chinese companies can do whatever they want in America, but our companies cannot do anything over there unless they allow it. And even then, they steal our stuff and reverse engineer it. So just reordering all of that has dramatic implications on the peace and security of the world. So we thank you. An important meeting, thanks to you, is going to happen on Saturday for the first time in a long time. There'll be direct talks between Ambassador Woodcock and a top-level leader in Iran. We hope that'll lead to peace. You've been very clear what Iran is never going to have is a nuclear weapon. And I think that's what led to this meeting, and we'll wait for him to come back from it. And we're hopeful about that.
So, very clear. All this is has been beamed to the American public. Iran has been targeted. Now, this is important again. I'm repeating it. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. That axis is being disaggregated. Russia has been spoken to. Like I said, it's a revolving door, a push and a pull kind of a thing. And Iran, direct nuclear talks. And in any case, in the Middle East, China doesn't have any geopolitical heft. So just don't think this is a trade war. There is something beyond that.
Well, Mr. President.
Then, of course, the Greenland. This is a very interesting video I came
In the
across.
cold silence of the tundra, a bond was born, not from treaties or trade, but from blood and bravery. While Germany controlled Europe, the Nazis set their sights on the Arctic. Greenland became an unwitting combatant, and the United States stepped in, not to conquer, but to protect. In 1943, nearly 1,000 American soldiers with 4 chaplains set sail from New York to Greenland, carrying with them hope, duty, and a quiet fear. But their ship was torpedoed by a Nazi U-boat, and the frigid waters of the North Atlantic became a grave. Those 4 chaplains gave up their life vests, giving their lives so that others might live, to protect America and Greenland. Their sacrifices helped win our freedom, and we will never forget. Together, Americans and Greenlanders stood as sentinels at the top of the world. But today, Greenland faces new threats from Russian aggression and Chinese expansion. Our shared legacy lives on in every joint mission, every Arctic patrol, every partnership forged in the shadow of melting ice and rising tensions. This is not just history, it is destiny. Now is the time to stand together again. For peace, for security, for the future, America stands with Greenland.
So there's a clear attempt at Greenland. There's an outreach. They say you choose self-determination, do what you want, rise away from Denmark, come with us, all choices, everything being extended to Greenland. And it's very clear publicly, get China out of that area. Don't let China enter the Arctic Circle. And that, I think these all are achieved. They are done and dusted. Okay, and this reordering is very important. Out of the Middle East, China out of the Middle East, China almost no influence in the Russia-Ukraine war, Iran going away. It's not simple. Okay, it's just not simple trade war. Right. And then, of course, the question is on everyone's mind, can China retaliate? And this is what I'm getting Scott Bessent again and again, because it's a trade war. Lot is dependent on, finances. That's why, right?
You want to sell to Americans, you got to make it in America.
So you want to sell to Americans, make in America.
Pay the tariff.
So how is China as a nation going to, this is such a big challenge. It's directly in their face. It's about every country on the globe, but it's really more than any other country about China, I think it's fair to say. How are they going to respond? What's their retaliation look like?
Well, I don't know if they can retaliate for a couple of reasons. If you look at the history, and I used to teach economic history, and when you look at the history, we are the debtor nation.
Yes.
We have the trade deficits. The surplus nation is in the weaker position because the Chinese business model, and Tucker, by the way, the Chinese business model and the economy are the most unbalanced, imbalanced in the history of the modern world. We've never seen anything like this in terms of their export level relative to their GDP, relative to their population. So I think it is going to be very difficult for them to try to change the model. They're in a deflationary recession/depression right now. They're trying to export their way out of it, and we can't let them do that. But I think that when you think the Chinese manufacturing system is like that old Disney movie with the brooms carrying the buckets.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. Like, that's their business model. It's not going to stop. Now, what could happen if you were to say, Scott, what's the dream scenario? That somehow there could be a deal where the U.S. and China, we want more manufacturing, which would mean a smaller part of the economy's consumption. The Chinese have this imbalanced economy with too much manufacturing, and actually the Chinese consumers really get the short end of the stick. So Chinese households, they're called in what's called the middle income trap. That could we do something together to say, okay, you rebalance, you consume more, manufacture less. We are going to consume less and manufacture more, and we'll be military rivals. There'll still be an economic rivalry, but we're going to level the playing field by a lot. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow. That's not going to happen in a month. But over the next few years, they may have to come around because I think their business model is broken. I think President Trump's broken their business model with these tariffs.
So you're describing, the famous scenario where if you take a bank loan, the bank is in charge. They can repossess whatever you borrowed against. But if you take a big enough loan, you're kind of in charge of the bank.
Exactly. And they've just got such a big deficit with us that
They need our markets.
they can't survive without it.
Are you confident that there's like a clear enough channel of communication between the two governments that the details can be worked out and that nothing will go crazy in the meantime?
Well, I think what gives me a lot of confidence is the relationship between President Trump and Chairman Xi.
Yes.
That when you have a direct line of communication at the very top, then I think it's very difficult for things to go haywire.
So that puts a lot of things in perspective. Still, the Americans are confident they'll be able to pull it off, and China doesn't have any retaliatory steps. We'll talk of the Chinese thing a little later. We'll talk of it from their perspective. Okay? Because in any analysis, you have to see both perspectives. But at this point of time, this is the strategy of Trump. It's just not China, it's beyond China.
You want to sell to American?
Okay. And then, what else is Trump doing? He's hit, I mean, this article is about Vietnam. Fine. But actually, he's ring fencing China. He's ring fencing China to ensure that anyone around him, all countries around China are aligned to USA. He's forcing them. Right? So what are the two main strategies which they're being blunted? Moving production abroad and sales to non-US markets. Both these. As per the Chinese, these tariffs will deal a blow to that. And they're not going to allow indirect imports, Chinese goods from these other countries. That will be part of the negotiations because the US clearly knows. So the ring fencing of China is an important factor in containing China. And this will bring in its own form of containment, which no one has spoken of so far. Okay? And then look at this.
It worked out really very well.
We're telling allies, drop your tariffs on us, bring your factories here, and buy American. And while you're at it, put up trade barriers against the Chinese like we're doing. And if you don't, our tariffs are going back up on you. So just sign on the dotted line and we'll get you a picture with Trump and Bessent, Lutnick, and maybe Elon will send you a car.
So it's very simple. If you want to, deal with USA, we'll drop the barriers. You put up your barriers against China. So this rerouting is out. And of course, look at him. He's also saying something. Okay.
It worked out really very well.
Sorry.
We're telling allies your car.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So it's very clear that USA is not going to allow those who are dealing with them to deal with China as previously. Because some dealings will go on. So they're actually realigning the global system. Okay. And then it's just not that. Militarily, they're getting up a base next to Guam in those China islands. This is the first report I've seen. It's in the second island chain. Why? Now they're increasing the number of targets for the Chinese. They're increasing their own survivability by getting more bases and capability enhancement in the Western Pacific. It's happening. It's going on in parallel lines. They've started a shipbuilding program. And in all major shipbuilding consortiums and discussions and all that, USA is withdrawn. If USA is withdrawn from anything, any of these events, everyone who's participated in that event is in a limbo. Even if it is sponsored by China. The big guy is not in the room, as simple as that. But what are the dangers of this strategy? So many smartphones and laptops and video games and everything, comes from China. Trump's allies have become ambivalent. They themselves don't know whether to respond to Trump, which way to respond. What will I get? We'll know in the next 1 month, 2 months, within the next 90 days, we'll get a clear idea as to where this whole story is going. Then the next big question is, can Trump survive the markets? Can Trump survive public opinion? Obviously, he's not got that clear idea of his public opinion and the markets, because he's already been once to the bond market. And if I'm right, some public opinion, some within lobbies within this thing, they've said, okay, Apple ko chhod do, Samsung ko chhod do. Will that wall become a trickle? And in the end, you'll find that everything China is coming to America, and anything America is not going to China. Will that happen? Or has there some back channel talk started? Whatever it is, it's going to be. And then, what is the pain point of Americans? At what point will Americans say, enough is enough, and they will leave Trump? That's a question mark, which we don't know. Sitting here, I can't tell. Okay. If you leave the Democrats out, and if you leave the left-leaning, left liberal newspapers out, you don't know what's happening inside. And that's one of the reasons why the Democrats lost. Their own base gave up on them. And then there's the issue of these nuclear bonds. The bond market is absolutely unsteady. I don't understand much of the bond markets, but let me give a fundamental thing. The riskier bonds are the long-term bonds, government bonds. And governments function with money collected from bonds. The general thinking is, if the stock goes up, the bonds go down. If the bond market goes up, the stock markets go down. But for the past 1 week, both are going in the same direction. That is instability. Who's selling these bonds? We don't know. Right? Is China selling those bonds? Because China is supposed to hold a lot of bonds. But China, as per official news, has let go a lot of bonds. Their holdings have come down. And today, Japan holds maximum of US bonds. But there is also another thing, that China still holds the maximum number of bonds, but through Benami transactions. After all, China is parking its money somewhere. And those Benami transactions or Benami holdings are going into the market. And the instability is being created. So it's also possible by now that China has created that bond instability. If that bond market goes down, then things will go out of control. वो ब्रह्मास्त्र है. But remember one thing, it's easy to say that. The moment that happens, China itself is at big, huge risk. Then China can't control its own situation. Or that must be the last option, the way I look at it. Okay. So these are the issues at this point of time, largely which define Trump's strategy against China. It's not conclusive. Where it's going to go, it's uncertain. When Nobel laureates can't say where this is going, who am I? Okay. Now let's look at the flip. What's China's play in the trade war? Xi Jinping has to do a lot of scratching. That much I know. One thing is for sure, and this is which USA understands. Sorry, this is something which China understands well. And this has come from a Chinese who says you can't avoid the US market. In the end, it's the world's biggest spender. There is no other alternative. And it is that alternative against which China has fought. Right? So that's how it is. There's no other alternative as far as they're concerned. And then I think somewhere China has made a mistake. They said, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Trump had put tariffs on everyone. The whole world was against him. But they didn't retaliate. It was only China which retaliated. So he retaliated back. It became a spiral. Two walls stood up. So very clearly, Trump overnight pivoted and brought down the walls against the rest of the world. So has he brought the rest of the world with him and left China isolated? If China had kept quiet with everyone and let the rest of the world speak against him, maybe the tariff would have been at the 20-30% and the dialogue would have got back underway. But if you see the Chinese psyche ever since Trump became the president, he's going to put tariffs, we're going to retaliate. We are prepared. That's the chatter which has been going on in their media. What can he do? We know how to handle Trump. So the moment that fellow put, these guys put, because by the time the first set of tariffs came on Liberation Day, China had primed itself mentally that they'll retaliate. No one else retaliated, they retaliated, they were the only one out. So this aggression has not worked. They've painted themselves into a corner. Let's be very clear. In fact, that's what I've said. China has been sucked into reacting. And then there's this popular view, and we must examine this, that the Chinese political system will give it the edge when fighting with Trump. Why? China has this long history. It's a single party state with leaders who have pursued their policies with single minded effort, irrespective of whether it did, turned into a catastrophe for the nation, whether it was human or economic. I mean, that's known. It is not something new. We have this Mao's legacy of great leap forward and the famine, in which 35 to 40 million people just died. And Mao didn't stop. That was the time he invaded India. And soon after that, he started the Cultural Revolution. So the Chinese people are conditioned to take misery. And then what about Deng's legacy during Tiananmen? At the height of things, he said, kill people, because communism must prevail. Though the official figure is about 1,000 odd people died in Tiananmen Square, the unofficial is 35 to 40,000 were killed all over the country to regain control. And then China kept quiet. Then what about Xi's legacy during COVID? He shut the whole country down. He didn't give them good vaccines. He ruined the economy. If today China is in this state, it is thanks to Xi Jinping. But yet you don't see that spark within these Chinese. They're like subdued cows. और भेड़ बकरी की चाल, भाई करते रहो काम भेड़ बकरी की तरह, सोचो मत. There's no voice. They're prepared to give up their voice. So this kind of people will take punishment. उसको क्या है? वैसे भी वो गरीब है. And now Xi Jinping has said, we will resolutely fight back and stand our ground to the end. Already he's raised nationalism up. And they'll stand. The Chinese are, I think, psychologically conditioned not to use their brain beyond a point. That's a problem. And then I always say, in China, there is this rich country and poor people syndrome. This is something I got today. It was surprising, and that's why I put the figure. 600 million Chinese take home less than $140 a month. And they have minimum social security, a major reason they save so much and consume less. $140? How much is $140? 12,000 rupees. That's it. You're talking 600 million Chinese out of 1.4 billion? Even if I'm wrong by 100%, double कर लो 24,000. Yeah, 24,000 क्या होता है इस जमाने में? We all think this country is rich. Standard of living is great and all that. This is the truth. And you know, I get it all these from Chinese sources. There's some painting going on in my house. I asked that chap painter casually, yeah, how much do you get? He says, sir, every day I get 1,500 rupees. I work for about anything between 25 to 26 days in a month. A painter here gets more than what he gets in China. I mean, this is a revelation. If this is right, then you're looking at a different China. You have to deal with it differently. This is a China, despite being so rich, has not given stimulus to the people. They're still worried about the people. If the people get too rich, they will start asking for freedoms, and that social contract will go. And we always say China thinks long term. They're preparing for this fight for a long term and they fell for it. And there's an aging society. They don't have the legs to stand. Well, will there be a case where Xi Jinping will have to bow to the people in near future as he did during COVID? Those white sheet demonstrations, that bridge man and all that. Immediately one day he took the COVID away completely. Will his hand be forced in this case? And what happens to that social contract? You give me your riches and I'll give you your prosperity. Where is that? So China suffers from this syndrome. On one hand, the Communist Party and Xi Jinping have the capability to withstand Trump tariffs to some extent. But when factory closures are taking place, people are getting laid off, people are not getting jobs, their items are not getting sold out, and they'll accumulate. Where do they go? So there are repercussions which we don't know. It's too early days. Now this is a analysis by an American, naturally, Chamat Palapitya. Just listen to it and we'll talk of it after this. It's very interesting again.
What I want to say is I think that we underestimate the difficulty, as you said, that China is in. So I'll just give you a couple stats. Together, America and China represent almost half of world GDP. But underneath the covers, what we keep forgetting time and again is America is the market that matters. China has an aging population. They have a very difficult case for foreign investment. In fact, foreign investment in China has fallen off of a cliff. They have very murky rules on IP, and they have a very difficult economic forecast if they shrink. And so when you look at the China case, they're in a worse position than we are, which is why they have to sort of come to the negotiating table now and figure out some reasonable thing. And I think this is what President Trump was alluding to when he said they want to come to the table and they don't quite know how.
So he's spoken of a few issues where China is weak. And we all know it's weak. There's nothing new. And this is being factored in. Right? Okay. Now this is again a very interesting thing, graph. If you look at it, this red line is the price of their goods, the price line or the price index, whatever it is. And this is the export volumes. The export volumes have been going up and the prices have been reducing. So irrespective of their huge price exports, their the profit margins are less because the prices are low. And that leaves China very vulnerable. Okay, that leaves China very vulnerable. Even a small dip in the export volumes will kill this. At this point, this is a big major vulnerability. Okay, and if you look at the other weaknesses of China, and there are many, the property crisis has not gone anywhere. It's there. The local governments are struggling with debt. There's no way they can overcome that debt in the next 3 to 4 years. Okay, the financial institutions and households are saddled with debt. Where does all this debt go? It can't vanish in thin air. Unemployment is high, and young people don't have jobs. And I'll show that to you a little later. Now, consumer prices are continuing to reduce, and they are in a deflation cycle. And we've spoken of deflation for the past 6 months. And I've shown you evidence in the past 6 months that China is in a deflation cycle, though they don't admit it. And reliance on manufacturing export is high, we know. Now, if there's a global financial crisis, it will hit China the hardest. Whether it's bonds, credit rating, whatever it is. Forget what happened to USA for a moment. We are looking at China. Can China get hit or going into financial turbulence? That's the end of the China dream. You have to understand, it's just not a matter of survival. It's also a matter of taking that dream forward. Sinocentric world order, this, that, all that nonsense. Okay? Yeah, BRI is at risk. And this is something very interesting. There's a country called Niger where China has oil concessions. In the past 6 months, something funny is happening there. The new government of Niger is holding China to ransom. And that story I will tell later. And Niger was the shining beacon of BRI. If that happens, and what if in another one odd place something else happens due to this instability, BRI will collapse. All sovereign guarantees, the moment China weakens, all sovereign guarantees which it has with countries, and what happens is in a financial collapse or a global financial turbulence, governments will change. That's inherent. And the new governments which will come will say, yeah, I am not interested in this deal with China, to hell with you. And China doesn't have the military power to go and enforce that guarantee. Now, China has disrespected all international institutions. In any case, they're all being broken. So this is a fundamental weakness of China, which I find. And this came out when I was reading about all that. And US tariffs will sap demand and factory closures will happen. Small businesses, whether in China or USA, will suffer. There's going to be blood on the streets. And what's interesting is there's no scope for stimulus in China. We've seen it. Another weakness is the legacy of Xi Jinping. What will Xi Jinping do? Xi Jinping wants to go down in history of China as one of the tallest leaders, but not this way. So what will he do? Will he burn the bridges? If he burns the bridges, he will not get what Mao got. He will not get the stature of Deng Xiaoping. So Xi Jinping can't play hardball with whatever cards he has. In any case, his cards are weak. He can't play hardball. I'm not underestimating China. China can do still a lot of things, but China can't play hotball. Okay, there's a lot of info war and all on that. Then China has this fundamental deficiency: energy and resource deficiency, food security. What about aging demographic? All this will not get wasted away just because there's a trade war and few commercials have come out, or some videos have come out about Maga Shaga and all that mocking. China can turn towards EU, but there are limits to EU and China relationship. Okay, now what are the limits? People say, oh, EU can turn towards China or China will go to EU, but there are problems in this. China has not been very flexible with EU. Plus, China's attitude towards Russia or its support to Russia has already pissed off EU. And then what about the effect of dumping? EU is struggling to revive its own industry. It's not able to do. If it accepts Chinese dumping, end of story of EU's industrialization or economies. That's what I've written. Correlation between rising Chinese imports and declining European production. And 25% of jobs in EU are manufacturing. And if China dumps, that goes down, EU is finished. So why will EU help China? And then EU is already grappling with rising energy costs. Why will it help China out at all? Energy it has to get from USA. So there are issues beyond what we see. Okay, what about Asia, China? Everyone says, Xi Jinping, I'll show you those things later. I'm going to the neighboring countries and do all that. Fine. Let's take all countries in in Asia. Japan, South Korea, Philippines, and Australia are US allies. They will not cooperate with China to go against USA. And there is no guarantee that China will give to any one of these fellows that you trade with me, I'll not invade you. वो तो वैसे ही डर है, वो भी मिलिटराइज कर रहे हैं, right? Okay, what about Cambodia, Laos? These are Chinese surrogates, they'll be big, but what about the capacities? Their capacities is only that much. What about Vietnam? Vietnam has dual equations. It has equation with USA, it has equation with China. And USA is now twisting Vietnam's tail. The transshipment through Vietnam will be killed. That I am very clear by USA. Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei. All these four countries have trade relations with China and security equations with USA. Why security equations with USA? They are scared that they'll be gobbled up in the South China Sea. They all have problems with China and South China Sea. So will they go close to China? In any case, like I said, you very clearly heard what the Chinese strategy, US strategy is. Myanmar is a completely black box. They've had an earthquake. From what I heard, the CMEC has been hit. As it is, there are scams on the border, which are mostly detrimental to China. Okay. So, and Myanmar won't buy anything from China in a hurry. And China has not entered Myanmar beyond a point. The interesting thing is North Korea, which is drifting away. And understand, except probably Japan in this area and South Korea, the rest are all small economies. They can't take the slack of Chinese goods. India has already said virtually, sorry, we will not take it. Okay. What about Russia? Can it turn to Russia? But Russia has a limited economy. It's a wartime economy. He can't consume Chinese overproduction. then Russia will say, with the way you are, how will you stand up to you? You can't stand. You have to find your own way to stand up to USA. Don't come near me because I'm trying to end my war. He's not going to help China to in this trade war. And Russia has a liability with EU. If China gets too close to Russia, they lose EU completely. So Russia, as of now, if you see, has not come in the picture at all in trade war, except a few Sputnik tweets which are coming regularly against the USA. But they have very clearly taken the trouble of not giving anything which indicates a Russia-China alliance. Okay. What is the play? China has no option but to save face. China wants to, exploit the loopholes of democracy, and it's doing skillfully. Its Infowar is on full thing. It's getting its propaganda through slick videos and all that. Right? And the next thing is China has got one great advantage. Chinese people are in a bad shape. It doesn't matter if few factories close, they'll continue to be in a bad shape. I told you earlier, the pain point of China is pretty low, or rather high. They can take a lot of pain. And they're doing this outreach to EU and India because these, I think, two are the big fish which China wants to net. So Xi Jinping has moved swiftly to markets to stabilize them because he's had to stabilize his own markets. So the yuan is trading, last when I heard, is about 7.42. 7.2 was the magic figure, red line. Let's cross the red line. So it's not very hunky dory. And there's also news that the shares are being propped up by buying. Okay. The companies are buying their own shares. So that's artificial. Now China says this attack by USA is an attack on the multipolar system and trading system and all that. You can keep saying what you want, but the deglobalized world will kill China. Let's be very clear. The long-term implications of a deglobalized world. If China had great advantage of the WTO and globalization and all that. If that gets deglobalized, even by 10%, China has sunk. Then the downward ripple effect is huge. Okay? China's other partners can't take up the slack. Xi Jinping can go where he wants. Right? Okay. They're trying to go to RCEP. RCEP is almost out of the equation at this point of time. It's not really functional also. Then they've resorted to Mao and his brand of, videos and his brand of propaganda, and they've gone back to Mao to prop up their whole story. That we will fight to the end and all that. It's a very interesting, small video which they've put out. And then, of course, they've come out with these things like make America strong again, all that. The Americans also retaliated. So this info war is also going on. But I think the Chinese have flooded with info war. So I don't know whether it is, going to work. At some level, it's not going to work. And I also see at this point of time, there are a lot of guys who are bots from China who are going against what I'm saying. This is all part of public opinion, information forming, and all that nonsense. One chap has said, "Who is this fellow?" Look at this fellow. This fellow is a Chinese bot. He says level of China observer in China, India. He's put Indian name, but he's from China. Okay. Now the next thing is this whole story could have could not have come at a worse time for China than this. And China was in dumps. We've been discussing it, right? The factories in China are now, there's a lot of investment in production. Lot of investment in production. Where is it going to go? That is the only leg on which China was standing. Its property had gone, investment had gone, everything, infrastructure had gone, everything had gone. Right? So, if this goes, what happens to China? And then one of their economists says, look, China today is at the risk of getting its overseas assets taken up. If this exceeds, like what has happened to Russian assets, they were frozen. What happens if Chinese assets are frozen by USA? You put money, you think you're going to take it out and sell it into the market. He freezes, what happens? He freezes for the next 6 months. Then you're left without any money to handle. He'll say for the next 6 months, no sale of bonds. I mean, these things are yet to be played out. China is at risk. So when people say China can offload their bonds into the market, it might not be feasible. And now they are worried about it. They are looking at fixing consumption. Consumption is, I've always said, is the weakest point of China. Okay, it's not simple. Why it's not simple? In March, the consumer prices fell and more deflation. On one side, the trade war is going up. On the other side, consumption is going down. It will go down further. If it goes down further because jobs are off. See, in this kind of uncertainty, who will go and buy a fridge? I won't. Okay. If I don't have a job and I don't know if my factory is going to close or not, why should I invest into something which I don't need? So there's a problem for China, the people of China. If that doesn't happen, their production won't revive. If that trade and thing goes down, and if their household don't spend, then you're looking at some bleak future for China. So how long can China withstand these? Again, it gets linked to the legacy. And China has not been able to convince its people to consume. If you see these articles which are coming out, all these are coming out at the same time at which this trade war is happening in the past 15 days. The internal health of China is weak. I mean, we have to understand that. And then there's this Canton Fair. In the past 3-4 years, this Canton Fair has not attracted great people. It's still in the same stage. Now this is going to be even worse. And China's fear is, will the goods become too cheap? Will they be forced to sell at a distressed sale rather than holding on? What about the normal people? These are the questions which are coming up in the past 1 week, which have come up in China. This is not my imagination. Where do they invest? Where do they keep their savings? Gold? Property, they can't keep. Stocks, they don't know whether to keep. Will they buy bonds? Okay. Then China has gone, this is 2 days back, they said we'll give you jobs and all that. But where are the jobs? This is a very interesting thing. There was some firm, some nuclear cooperation of China, which advertised for 2,000 jobs or so. Yeah. And it got 1.38 million applicants. 2,000 jobs, 1.38 million applicants. Unheard. That's the problem in China at the base level. And to add to all this, another guy in PLA has gone. That Miao Hua, who was that CMC member, next guy, he's also gone. part of that department. So the CMC itself is unstable. And the more they're investigating corruption, the more chaps are coming out. Is this corruption? I don't think it's a corruption anymore. It is more of political instability. So while everything is happening outside, Xi Jinping has problems inside politically. There is a very clear thing: all these communists will get together and weather the storm. That will be their, hope. But will they be able to do it completely? I don't know. Then, of course, this thing came out 2 days back, day before yesterday. Chinese sellers are ditching stock, their surpluses. This came today. Okay. Now, these are the questions which are being raised within China. Can China's urban giants withstand declining population? And mind you, their declining population is not that bad at this point of time. But they are also already worried for what will happen in the next 3 to 4 years. I told you, by 2030, you'll see a different China. This war is not 72 hours old in the current format, and already that aging thing is coming into the forefront. In this article, if you read, he says, look, people are shrinking in cities. Cities have empty apartments. People are going in for cheaper stuff. There is a fundamental weakness in China. It's one thing to say China will stand up to USA and all, but there is a fundamental weakness. We have to understand that. It's this, the pinch of China's population. That's what he talks of. He says talks of abandoned buildings, shrinking workforce, smaller consumer market, fiscal revenues which have gone smaller for local government. पैसा नहीं है भाई अंदर, कुछ भी बोल लो. Rich state, poor people. And then of course they're continuing with their missile and all this nonsense. And last but not the least, FDA has fallen off the cliff in China. People are shutting shops. This is a Microsoft AI lab in Shanghai, which they've just closed. So if you see all these things, you'll realize that while Trump has initiated something, okay, I think a lot of things he probably didn't want to initiate the way he initiated. It's a theory of unintended consequences, which is playing with Trump. But he's taken the initiative. And he's got the initiative because no one knows what he's going to do next. So the cards are with him. China can only at this point of time give out these videos and keep back. They've not been able to do anything except retaliatory, what shall I say, videos and infowar and all that. A lot of propaganda, a lot of hyping the nationalism and all that. How long will that go? We don't know. There's a bigger question before I finish off and take questions. While Trump has done all what he has done, will he get industrialization back? That plan I don't see. I don't see a plan by any one of Trump's cabinet to say this is the way we're going to industrialize and this is the way we're going to do things. It's easy to get into a trade war. Difficult to get out of it. I mean, it's easy to get into any war, but it's very difficult to get out of a trade war, or that matter any war. The exit strategy, I feel, is always the most important thing as far as conflict is concerned. And that is something they don't have. Both. And now it's more of a matter of, prestige for both. They'll not back down. Matter of face. So let's see, right? And as we go along, we'll unfold more layers of this whole story because it's going to affect us. It's going to affect India and it's going to affect the choices we make here. Okay. Okay. With this, I'll take a few questions. I have no idea how US thinks it can think of bringing manufacturing back to US. Changing air filter, oil change, pollen filter cost me $350 at Ford Service Center. Labor is unaffordable in US. I agree with you, Karthik. I agree with you 100%. I completely agree with you. That's why I said in the end, the plan to bring back industry and create jobs in USA at the level of labor costs which are in USA and then making it profitable, is it feasible? Is a big question. Okay, so I must say, yeah, this is a question I must answer. Where is this? Where is Bangladesh in this war? Bangladesh is sitting in Bangladesh. You have no choice but to sit there. Okay, you please go back 3 days back on the thing which I did with General Hasnain. Bangladesh is at the cusp of taking a rock and hitting its own head. Right. How can US manufacture short term? They have to downsize US bubble, that is de-dollarization. Well, I don't think you're right, quite right. De-dollarization is not the way which US will think. How they will do, we'll see. Because already a certain amount of people have committed to manufacture in USA. But most of them, they have to do on some twin manufacturing basis. Twinning, which I explained yesterday. See yesterday's video, you'll see what I spoke of twinning. So there are methods, but I've not got clarity. That's why I've not spoken of it. And I really can't answer that also. Yeah, China's debt to GDP ratio is more than 300% in the scenario of high US tariffs. How long will $3 trillion reserve will last once reserves are exhausted? How China will do trade? That's the $1 million. That's a big problem with China. That's his biggest weakness. Right? I mean, okay. Apparently, 1,300 Chinese military officers have failed the Z loyalty test. These officers were originally handpicked and promoted by Z. Does Chinese army have any leadership left? That's the big question. That's the big question. That's one of the big instabilities in China. You see, at some point of time, if China gets sucked into a war, even into a skirmish, then it'll all go completely out. In fact, at this point of time, China doesn't have a military option also. So there are issues for China. Yeah, Sir predicted so many things right and quite ahead. If you don't know, it only means you are incapable of understanding Sir's content. If you think otherwise, yeah, I agree with you, Krishna. Don't worry. We don't. I mean, I'm grateful that all of you are trying to talk that fool down. Well, they're bots. They're brainwashed. They don't have the capability of looking at it from a different viewpoint. Okay. And I've been studying China. I have got almost 90% of what I've told about China right. You might agree with me or not agree with me. That's a different story. But I know what I'm doing and I've got it right. 3 years back, I said China will deflate. It's deflating. 4 years back, I said China's demographic will decline and it will be a major problem for them. You see, it's happening. 4 years back, I said that GDP will go down. It's going down. So nothing great. And I've always said during the height of, you know, the Galwan crisis, I said China will go back one day. They've gone back. I'm very clear. Those of you who are seeing for the first time, please understand. I've never been wrong about China because I have the advantage, unlike others, of seeing China across a fence, all at almost 18-20 points along our 3,200-kilometer border. That's a unique view of China. When I say China, of Tibet and Chinese there. So I'm very clear about how Chinese behave and what they are. Yeah, many items got like exempted for tariff, like laptop, computer. I know that. I'm aware of that. Okay. So China is at risk of generational depression. Young people have no belief in their government or leaders, so they spend their money on bags and clothes and lifestyle. You can't do that for life. I agree with you. There's no doubt about it. Right? Okay. Yeah. Kissinger effect. China went willingly with the US for 4 decades. So reverse Kissinger, why shouldn't Russia also collaborate with US? Can India facilitate US Russia rapprochement? How? This is China's fear value. This is China's fear. And if you see Russia's behavior in the past 15 days, there's not a single word which has come out of Russia. He's just laying back. He's saying which side the wind is blowing. India has got good relations with Russia. India has got good relations with USA. And if this triangle closes, China is left out. That's a major weakness today with China. And if China weakens a bit, there's no advantage in Russia having a great relationship with China. Understand that also. Look at it from the Russian viewpoint. The Russians have never been comfortable with what China is doing. And that is why the Russians went to North Koreans, gave them their satellite, and say, use my satellite for communications, and hived North Koreans out of China, took North Korean troops and gave them whatever, and used their ammunition, which China didn't give. They went to China first for ammunition. China didn't give. North Korea gave. So there are tensions, hidden tensions between Russia and China. Will this event, and if China weakens a bit, will that get resolved? Yeah. Yeah, if manufacturing collapses and factories close in China, where will the USA and the rest of the world get goods, as China is that's the challenge, Vish. I don't know. I have no answers for it. It will be calibrated. At the same time, I don't think that China will collapse overnight. There'll be a lot of problems in China, there's no doubt. It will not collapse. It will be a slow collapse. Whatever happens in China will be slow. But one thing for sure, there's going to be a recalibration of the world order. In this recalibration, China will have a tough time because deglobalization ho gaya, multilateralism khatam ho gaya. So China has to start developing new contacts, and any approach from China to USA will be hostile. Yeah, this is not an economic war. This is the war of destinies of nations. Which nation will rule the 21st century will be decided here. Will white lose their 500-year rule? Will Asia rise? We don't know. Let's see. That's a million-dollar question. Yeah, with regards to China, news of re-entry of Shein propped into my mind. It has partnered with Reliance. Is that a way to bring Chinese companies back into India but force them to part? See, that's the best way is to make them partner locally with the local guy having the lion's share and he being only a supplier. But that has to have a time span. It can't be all that entry is feasible. Could be okay for about say 2, 3, 4 years. After that, Reliance should be said, look, after 3 years, if you don't produce alternate share, forget about Sheen. This entry, which is being given to Sheen or Temu or whoever, should be conditional entry where local alternatives must be found within the next 3 to 4 years. After that, out. Trump action might work, but a big gamble considering that he has just one term. This task is not one term job. Do you think the idea is do enough damage so that direction cannot? I think that's the aim. 2 years, that's why he's in a hurry. So whatever he has to do is to do till next year. I mean, end of next year. So he'll do whatever he has to do. Then others will continue to do what they have to do. There's no choice. He'll set the tone. So that's very much the Trump line. I am very confident of that. See the clip with Trump and all those Wall Street CEOs where they bragged how much they made on the stock market. Possible, they would. Why not? Great Rishi, Dalai Lama, security must be enhanced. Tibetans must form their own divisions of army. Bharat must. Yeah, I agree with you. But that's a government policy, so I'll not comment on it. How has this situation so drastically changed the political equations within the CCP? Especially, how will this affect President Xi and his backers and military? This is going to be a tough thing for Xi Jinping. For the simple reason that if he, like I said yesterday, if he stands up to America and the Chinese economy goes down, then he's at risk. If he doesn't stand up, then his legacy at risk. Both ways is politically at risk. That is why Chinese leadership will go weak. But as I see, I think they've taken a decision to go up against USA. Let's see how far it goes. Yeah, nations, especially major nations, increase their defense budget and defense manufacturing in the anticipation of a kinetic conflict coming down the line if a current economic war heats up more. I've told you this. Remilitarization is on. Okay? Yeah. And Shruti Chandak, Namaskar. When countries all over the world is increasing their land occupancy, what is India doing for future Indians? Oh, well, we are not made that way. Let's be very clear. Okay, let me take some questions at the end. They must have come up later. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any more questions. Yeah. Sir, please shed some light on what's perhaps going on in Putin's mind right now. Putin is just laying back. He's just keeping quiet. He'll watch this whole story and he'll swing the way he has to. And he'll use Modi. He'll use our Prime Minister to swing whichever way. Of course, to swing to China, he doesn't need Mr. Modi, but to swing towards USA, he'll need. And that is why our Prime Minister's trip to USSR next month is important. What can China do if US stops supply of Intel and AMD chips and TSMC chips? China won't be able to make any laptop or smartphones. I agree with you, Saurabh. These are interconnected, intertwined economies which are, coming apart. The fact is, if you have a knot, you have a knot. To take them out, to take that knot out is not simple. Some strands will get cut. It's going to happen. I mean, this is something which has started, which unwinding it is not going to be easy for both. What role should be India? What should be India's role to take benefits of the current situation? Why Indian government is welcoming Chinese dumping mechanism? What should India do to increase its GDP in short run? See, Prasad, yesterday I did one whole video with P Gurus on this, with Mr. Shri Iyer. Just have a look at it. And we are not accepting dumping. Don't worry. Is there a possibility of USA avoiding bringing back manufacturing into the USA but completely taking out from Look, I think ultimately that will what will happen. You can't take manufacturing completely out of China. Some will remain. But even if 30% manufacturing is truly taken out of China and given elsewhere, I think they've achieved their thing. And out of that, even if about 10-15% goes back into USA, it's more than enough. You change the architecture completely. Yeah, I can't stop but commenting. Only country that positively cares about Bangladesh is India, but the reverse is also there, Avinash. The only country which Bangladesh these days likes to spite is India. That's the problem. With regards to China, news of re-entry of Shane propped up into my mind. It has partnered with Reliance. Is that a way to bring Chinese companies back to India? But yeah, that we've spoken. That's the same thing. Yeah. Leftists in India say let us total 15% of China export. US is total 15% of China export. Will not hit China. That's stupid. Prem, that's stupid. Okay, go back to that thing which I showed table in the beginning. The leftists are stupid. There is 15% is reduced because the indirect export to China has increased through Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, and all that. That is why Trump has put 44% tariff on them. Go back to my yesterday's video and day before yesterday's video to understand this better. The Chinese jets have surrounded Taiwan as per latest news. Don't worry, this is normal. I don't think it's a very great thing. Look, China can't go into war. They will go do some rounding up and all go back. We'll see. This is nice one. How desperate is your life? Come all the way to watch the general's analysis and completely ignore it. That's okay. That's his job. He's getting a job to, See, the fact is that these chaps are coming, these bots are coming and trolling us and putting all sorts of doubt. Indicates to you the level of information war which China has undertaken. Please understand that. Okay. And you see, the other point which I want to mention is the number of, what shall I say, videos or number of channels who analyze China in depth are very few in India. The way, and where they go to those channels which do actual analysis. So if more bots are coming and they're putting more comments, we should understand we are on the right track of thinking. Like Amitesh said, he doesn't agree with me most of the time. Neither do I, but that doesn't stop a debate. Okay. Right? And I don't mind you not agreeing with me. This is a democracy. Don't agree, don't agree. I have no problem. Yeah, why freedom fighters of Balochistan are not as aggressive as they were before and after the trade? Or they'll wait. They're taking their time. Yesterday only they blew up a few guys. They're doing chut-put actions. They'll wait before a major action has to be done. Oh, wait. What if Taiwan shifts a few locations? Let's see. There are. We'll see how that happens. Okay. I think Indians have woken up and are wanting real action. Will leadership slow pace hurt along the long run? No, I don't think so. Look, we are progressing a little slowly and steadily. Like I said yesterday, we are already the fourth largest economy in the world, and it didn't happen with anyone's help. We are doing it on our own, and we are doing it very confidently and steadily. If you do things too fast, you'll go like China and have a crash landing like China has. We will slowly absorb things and we will expand slowly. Let's take our time. We are a civilizational state. There's no hurry. What's the hurry? Just think of a Chinese who's my age. I'll take my own example. There's something which is very important for all of you to understand. I'm 68 years old. In my life, I've heard Mao's preaching. I've heard of the Gang of Four. I've lived through that time. I've heard Deng Xiaoping's rise, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and now Xi. At every time in this past 67 years, I've seen China going like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. The people have been sorry. I have seen them across a fence on the border. They don't live a great life. Upar they can't talk also. Here at least I have a chap who comes and does bot on me, who says I don't agree with you. I have no problem. ये तो यार हमारा free, we have freedom. आजादी है आजादी. In our country, I have seen problems. We have seen earthquakes, we have seen floods, we have seen railway accidents, we have seen many things in my 67 years. But I've seen roads coming up, I've seen railway tracks coming up. I've traveled in one of the first AC coaches in this country. I still remember traveling from Howrah station to Chennai in an AC coach. The difference between the first class fare and the AC fare was 64 rupees. And that day when I traveled, long back, on that this is the time when this was probably 83, 84 maybe, somewhere around that time. In that AC coach, there were hardly 10 of us because people couldn't afford the AC coach. And those days, a AC coach wouldn't give you blankets also. ठीक है, जमाना बदल गया है, धीरे 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 अच्छा बदल गया है. आजकल मैं ट्रेन में नहीं चढ़ता हूँ. ऐसे लोग, we have, our progress has been slow, steady, and good. Believe you me, I still go to villages and speak to people. I go to hinterland. I've gone to all corners of India, whether it is in Assam or in tribal areas or in Kashmir or in Gujarat, wherever. I've gone. India has changed the way you cannot imagine. It will not go back. It will only go forward. And I'm happy that it is going slowly forward. Okay. What are your memories of Mao era? Oh, that's very interesting. That was a time, we learned a lot of Mao because that was a time when Mao had 62 had happened and we had to learn. And we used to wonder, what is this fellow? This fellow looks like a really demon who lead people up. Anyway. Okay. Anyway, or things will happen slowly. See, finally, I see Amitesh Bera saying India's growth is sustainable. That is the best part of India. Okay. Anyway, yeah, ये क्या है? And this half kg Mao from Harvard Spitz. That's okay. Chalega. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining in. I've enjoyed my session here, and we will, join tomorrow. I'll get General Narayanan over. We're going to talk about many things, and we're going to have a freewheeling talk. I told him don't come prepared. We'll just talk and all that, and we'll keep this thing going. But there's something interesting happening in Baluchistan. We'll cover things as we go along. And Kishore, I see that you're coming from P Gurus. He says, I'm happy to talk to you. Thanks for your great service. Oh, fine. I'm very open. I spend a lot of time answering questions. So do join. All those who are from P Gurus also join Ganashot and subscribe. Same thing I'll say to Ganashot people, subscribe to P Gurus. We are like one channel. A lot of my videos today are going on P Gurus. And virtually today's talk is 2 topics, which I'll again put out. Yeah. Yeah. Why are Pinaka t-shirts so expensive? I must tell you, I just started it. The designer of that t-shirt is someone who's done it beautifully. It's expensive because unfortunately this facility in YouTube I've got only through US. Okay. I'm trying to see someone who can make it in India and to give it, because I'm sure if someone can make it in India and make it, it'll be very cheap. I'll start the thing about the prints at the earliest and t-shirts also at the earliest. I need to get someone who, I'm not into it, to be very honest, because this designer came and said, "Sir, I'll set up your shop." I said, "Like what?" I said, and the designs he made out of Pinaka and guns and all were very good. So I said, "Okay, set it up." He said, "We'll set it up on YouTube." So I said, "Set it up on YouTube." Right? Yeah. Now, if you know who's this guy, let me know. And if you can take on my orders, he has to print it and give it. I'll take it on. I have no problem. The designer of those, guns and all are unique. I know that they're unique. That's why I put it up. I mean, I get nothing out of it except that fact that some Ganashot merchandise. I get zero out of it. It all goes to the guy who's making it. And unfortunately, this firm whom this designer has approached is what YouTube recommends. So I'm taking that. I don't have a choice in this. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay, Amitesh. I have no problem. Disagreement is good. Okay. They say disagreement is the voice of progress. So don't worry. You and many others have made efforts to make sense out of Trump and his policy, but I think his impulsiveness will be his undoing. Let's see. Let's see how it is. I mean, we can only analyze what we can see and what we this thing and make sense of what's happening. And all this analysis is ultimately for India. And like I tell every one of you, it's not only Pinaka and those guns. We're getting more designs. He's promised me, and we'll get you a whole lot of designs. Hopefully by next week I should have these posters, and I'll put them up behind me. You can have a choice and pick it up. Those I'll get it made in India. With someone I don't know whom. The designer said he'll let me know. Okay. So fine. Thanks a lot. Good evening and Jai Hind to you till tomorrow. Thanks a lot.